Hey guys, today I'm sharing with you my 2 cheesecakes in one recipe. This is my easy cheesecake recipe, and this is also how I make my chocolate cheesecake. So you can either just do chocolate cheesecake with this or do both, which is really quick and easy and perfect for your holiday table. When you have company over, you've got 2 different cheesecakes. Look like you spent a lot of time on it, but it's so easy. Let's get started. In a mixing bowl here, you can use a hand mixer. I'm just making this a little bit easier on myself. I'm going to go ahead and add in my 4 blocks of cream cheese at room temperature. And I'm going to let this cream on its own for about 4 or 5 minutes or so until nice and smooth. I'm going to make sure and scrape the edges of the bowl to make sure everything is getting incorporated. And you also want to keep making sure to scrape the bottom of the bowl as we're making this cheesecake as well. So just get everything off the sides and the bottom. So after that has mixed for about a few minutes and it's nice and smooth, we're going to start adding in our granulated sugar a little bit at a time. I've added in a 1/2 cup and I'm going to let that mix together until nice and smooth. Then add in the next 1/2 cup, and I will have all the amounts listed below in the description box for you. Making sure again to scrape the sides and the bottom of the bowl. Now we're going to mix this sugar and cream cheese for about 5 minutes to make sure that it is completely and thoroughly incorporated. In total, I used 1 1/4 cups of granulated sugar. We want it to be really nice and smooth. So about 5 to 8 minutes, really let this mix. Scraping the bottoms and the sides every so often. To that, I'm going to go ahead and add in a nice splash of vanilla extract. You want at least a tablespoon of vanilla in there. We really want that nice flavor. And to that, I'm going to add in my secret ingredient for my cheesecakes, which is my dry milk powder. It's going to give it a really nice milky, creamy sort of flavor and texture, and it is perfection in my cheesecakes. Let that mix in till incorporated and smooth for a couple minutes. And then we're going to add in some sour cream. Sour cream also gives this amazing flavor and creaminess. Again, everything will be listed below in the description box. Mix that until it's thoroughly incorporated, and we really want a nice smooth batter, as smooth as we can. And to that, I'm going to add in some cornstarch. After that has thoroughly mixed in really well, we're going to go ahead and add in some heavy cream. Adding in our heavy cream. And again, scraping the sides and all the way down to the bottom of the bowl to make sure everything is getting smooth and creamy. Now I'm going to switch my mixer to off now, and look at that goodness. Oh my gosh, cheesecake is one of my absolute favorite things. Absolutely one of my favorite desserts ever. And this is a great way to have a variation of flavors in one recipe. So I am using some Ghirardelli, some of my semi-sweet chocolate chips. You can use any chocolate chips that you have or any kind of baking chocolate that you have. I'm going to go ahead and place some of this in a bowl. And we're going to add in some heavy cream to that. We're going to pop this in a microwave for about 20 seconds or so, depending on your microwave. You don't want it to burn, so you can do in 10 seconds and then 10 seconds. We just want that to get nice and hot. not to burn, but just to warm up our heavy cream so that our chocolate chips can melt in there. So after about 20 seconds or so in my microwave, I'm gonna let it sit for about a minute and then mix it together. Now I am using some store-bought pie crusts. I'm using an Oreo crust for my chocolate cheesecake, and I'm using a graham cracker crust for my regular plain cheesecake. You can make your own crusts, definitely, but this also helps make it so much easier on myself to quickly put together a really great cheesecake by using store-bought cheesecake crusts. They do have two different sizes in my grocery store of graham cracker crusts. I got the smaller one today, and I'll be sharing at the end how I do also make some cheesecake cupcakes with this exact same recipe. So you're technically getting 3 different cheesecakes in one recipe. Go ahead and remove the lid off of that. And you want to make sure that your oven is already preheated to 450 degrees. You want your oven to be nice and preheated for at least 15 minutes before you place your cheesecakes in there. Now we're going to move over and add in our eggs one at a time. I'm adding my eggs, mixing it by hand so I don't overmix, and I add my eggs in last of all when I'm mixing. I will be adding in my chocolate later, but if you add in your eggs and you mix it too much with the eggs, you can crack your cheesecake. So we definitely don't want to overmix. So I am just adding in my egg. I am kind of breaking up that yolk a little bit to help it. And then as soon as I don't see any more egg, I'm adding in my next egg. So you definitely do not want to over mix your eggs. Just until it is incorporated. I'm kind of folding in the egg a little bit, mixing it. You just don't want to overmix it. You have to mix it in, but you don't want to overmix it, just until it's incorporated. Now I'm going to go ahead and divide my batter into 2 different bowls. So I'm going to use a measuring cup just to kind of help me out here. You don't have to be completely even about this. So I'm going to use about 2.5 cups of batter for my chocolate cheesecake. And I'm going to go ahead and add in my chocolate ganache that we essentially made with the chocolate chips and the heavy cream. You want to make sure that it's not too hot at this point. And we're just going to add that in. I'm going to get my spatula at this point to make sure and scrape off all of that chocolate. Because if you know me, you should know how I feel about chocolate, and we don't waste it. We don't waste chocolate. Now, before we mix that in, we're going to add in some cocoa powder. Again, we don't want to overmix and overwork our batter at this point, so I'm not going to have to mix twice. So before I mix in that melted chocolate, I'm going to add in some cocoa powder. I'm sifting that in so there are no lumps. And we're just going to go ahead and fold all of this in itself together. Just slowly incorporate it until everything is incorporated in there. And again, don't overmix it, but that's just until everything is combined and mixed in. I'm going to add in that amazing cheesecake goodness in there. Get that all in there. And now I'm going to go ahead and get my graham cracker crust and fill that up. Now, depending on the size of the graham cracker crust that you get, you can probably use all of this remaining batter in there. I had some left over, which is perfect because I love to make little mini cheesecakes with the remaining batter. Make sure it's as even as best as you can. I did overfill this a little bit too much, so you want to be careful with that, but it worked out great at the end. I have a large baking tray here, and this is what I use all the time because it just so happens to fit. So what I'm going to do here is place it on my tray. Try and figure out a way that you can get it to fit as best as you can without spilling your batter. And I'm going to fill it with some water about an inch or so up the sides of my pan. I don't have to worry about anything leaking in there at this point because we're using a really sealed bottom for this because it is a store-bought. But if you were using your own, making your own crust, you do want to make sure and wrap the bottom of your pan with foil as best as you can so no water seeps in there. Now my oven is already preheated to 450 degrees. I'm going to carefully and oh so gently place my cheesecakes in there. These are going to bake for 15 minutes at 450. After that 15 minutes, you are going to turn your heat down to 200 degrees, and you're going to let that bake for about 50 to 55 minutes at 200 degrees. After that time, you're going to take your heat off completely, turn your oven off, and leave it in there for about an hour. Then you're going to open your oven door and leave it in there for about 30 minutes with the oven door slightly open. And then after 30 minutes, you can remove it. I know it seems like a lot, but it's really going to help that temperature drop gradually so we don't have any cracking. And as you can see, this is perfectly, it's a no-fail cheesecake. Just follow those steps, especially with the baking. It's very important and you won't have any cracks and you'll have a perfect cheesecake. So after you've taken it out of the oven, you want to let it cool for about 2 hours, an hour to 2 hours on your countertop before placing it in the refrigerator. I like to leave mine in the water there for about 30 minutes and then remove it. And you're going to wash your little trays and cover it up. Now, for my chocolate cheesecake, I serve as is. You can serve with whipped cream, chocolate shavings, get decorative and fancy with it. My plain cheesecake, I always use some cherry pie filling. Now, the remaining bit of my batter that I have here, I have some coconut dream cookies. Now, these are amazing Keebler cookies. They have coconut and caramel and fudge in them. And I use the remaining bit of my batter, and I place a cookie at the bottom and the batter on top. And what happens is as it's baking, the caramel toasts up, the coconut toasts up a bit, the caramel melts into the cheesecake, and it is the best. If you are making mini cheesecakes with these as well, I will have the baking instructions below for you, but I bake them at 350 for about 20 minutes or so. The baking is a lot different for my mini cheesecakes than it is for my big cheesecakes because I'm not using a water bath, but here I am the next day cutting into my cheesecakes. These have to chill overnight is for best results. And what I love about these cheesecakes is that it's really smooth and creamy, but it's also kind of nice and fluffy and cakey at the same time. I use a straight knife every time I'm cutting my cheesecakes, and you can clean the knife off to get nice clean cuts every time. And there you have it. It's nice and smooth and creamy, fluffy and smooth. Fluffy, cakey, smooth, creamy, goodness, chocolatey. It's perfection. You get a chocolate cheesecake, you get creamy, plain cheesecake. I will have all the amounts listed below in the description box for you guys. I usually take my plain cheesecakes and again top it with cherry pie filling. It comes in a tin. You put fresh berries, make your own little compote for on top, but I usually just use the easy stuff because whenever I'm making this, I'm usually making it on a holiday, and I like things to be a little bit easier, especially when those days are a little bit longer in the kitchen. I hope that you guys enjoy. Again, if you are making those cupcakes, they will be baked at 350 for about 20 minutes or so. Remove them, let them cool completely, and then serve as is. Enjoy. If you try it and you enjoy it, let me know. I hope that you enjoy it, and I hope you guys have a great Merry Christmas and a Happy Holidays. I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.